Hi, I'm Scoot. Welcome to Scoot on the Air YouTube. I just got off the air on my radio show in WWL in New Orleans, and we had a special show on tonight as part of the station's live reaction, instant reaction to the guilty verdict in the trial of Derek Chauvin and the death of George Floyd. And, the conversation was really a great conversation tonight on the air with just a couple of exceptions. And I just want to call out the racists. Most people, and in fact, even, a couple of police officers called, they totally agreed with the police officers who testified against Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin was wrong. He killed George Floyd. He didn't have to, but he did. It seems as if we may have reached a tipping point. I hope this is the case, because we have yet to have a really honest conversation about race relations in America. We don't want to have it. And there's some stumbling blocks in the way. And so we've yet to have that conversation. Is this going to help us? I think it might. And it might help us because there were so many white Americans who totally empathized with George Floyd in this situation. It was so obvious what happened. There was essentially no defense for the police officer. And George Floyd was not a choir boy. He had a past. He had a present and had drugs in his system. But it still came down to the fact that this police officer knelt on his neck until he died. I think a lot of white Americans could relate to the victim in this case, when maybe in other cases they've had a hard time relating to the victim because the victim doesn't look like them. But this was just such a disgusting disregard for humanity that I believe it resonated with a lot of people. I enjoy doing this special show. I'm on the air 1 to 4 in the afternoon, Central Time in New Orleans on WWL. And if you don't have the app, download the Odyssey app. It's free. Odyssey, Audacy. Download Odyssey and type in WWL. And you've got our show and our station wherever you have your phone. But it was a nice conversation. I had like really great bumper music going in and out of breaks, like Sam Cooke's classic, A Change Is Gonna Come, Easy to Be Hard by Three Dog Night. I found some songs from the past that are so relevant to the conversation today. And I feel good about what I'm seeing. And so far, people taking to the streets have been peaceful in Minneapolis. And I've been busy doing the show tonight, so I haven't caught up on everything that's going on around the country. But there's no excuse for violence. No excuse for looting. Zero. No excuse. But yet that still is always the threat, isn't it? So far, so good. And things have been very calm here in New Orleans. But I want to share with you just a couple of thoughts that I got in talking to these callers. The sad thing is they were closet racists. But truthfully, they weren't really that far in the closet. I mean, they were kind of sticking out of the closet. But they tried to kind of hide their racism. Things like Derek Chauvin did not get a fair trial. Well, that's bullshit. He got a fair trial. He got a very fair trial. Oh, what if they would have moved it to another venue? That video was seen everywhere. I don't think that would have made a difference. But that is a disguise of a racist comment. You see, what happens is there are some people, and the good news is there are not that many compared to the whole population, but there are a few people that cannot bring themselves to accept the reality that the white cop was wrong and the black suspect was right. They cannot bring themselves to admit that. And that is the stumbling block in race relations in America. I hope it changes now. But this, oh, he didn't get a fair trial. That's a disguise for racism. They don't want to accept the verdict. Well, they have to because it was unanimous. And so they don't want to openly say it, but these are the subtle hints of white supremacy. Sometimes, as you know, they're not so subtle. Also, I got this question from a couple of people. What if the cop had been black? So, if the cop had been black, we may not have the conversation. It doesn't make it right. But the cop wasn't black. The cop was white. And so what we learned in this particular case, in the death of George Floyd, is that being white did not protect a police officer. Being white and being a police officer did not protect Derek Chauvin, who is in jail right now. And I wonder what was going through his mind when he sat there and the judge read the verdict. Guilty, guilty, guilty. On all counts, unanimous decision by the jury. And then he was put in handcuffs, and this police officer was taken off to jail. This is an important moment because when we point out the bad cops, we are protecting the good cops. And the overwhelming number of police officers are good. And so this is our chance to recognize them. And also in talking about Derek Chauvin's lack of humanity, we also recognize how tough it is to be a police officer. That in these moments of passion, I mean, it's got to be tough to be a police officer. You got to be a tough person to be a police officer. But yet you also still have to maintain a degree of humanity. So to me, these are teaching moments when we just realize why we should have so much respect for police officers. Because not everybody can do that job. And if you can't do the job, don't even try. I had a guy call, one of the guys that called the show tonight and said that he's got a family member who's a police officer. He was always saying, well, he didn't get a fair trial and he's bringing up all this other stuff. And I said, do me a favor. If your family member is like you, call them and ask them to resign. Because if they're like you, they shouldn't be a police officer. Another thing that I got tonight, and mainly this was from two callers. Well, OJ got away with murder. Okay, that's news. Most of us believe that. But that was a way of saying, so Chauvin should have gotten away with murder. You see? And then one of the callers pointed out that cops, this is the guy that had the police officer in the business. Police officers will not pull over black motorists who are speeding, for example, because they're afraid of a confrontation. And I made a comment on my radio show about how I drove to Mobile a couple of weeks ago, from New Orleans to Mobile, Alabama, for my niece's wedding. And, I love driving my car. I have a fun car to drive. So, I'm doing 80. A couple times I went 85, 70 mile an hour zone. And there are people flying by me. And some of the people who flew by me were black motorists. And I couldn't help but think that if you're so concerned about being pulled over by the police because you're afraid of a confrontation, why go that fast? Why put a target on your back by breaking the law? And this caller was trying to just make it seem as if they get away with it because cops are afraid to pull them over. Well, I'm a white driver and cops aren't pulling me over in that situation. There are stretches of interstate, and I'm sure that's the case wherever you live. But there are stretches of the interstate here in New Orleans going east and going west. The speed limit is 70. People are going 90. And there's no police officers around. So nobody's being pulled over, white or black. So again, that was a ridiculous, ridiculous comment. I'm going to have a great conversation on my radio show tomorrow afternoon on WWL. It's 870 AM, 105.3 FM. That's in New Orleans in the Gulf South. And again, download the app Odyssey, Audacy, and type in WWL. And I'm on the air 1 to 4, Monday through Friday. That's Central Time. So tomorrow we'll also have a conversation about the role that the cell phone is playing in society. Because there were police officers who got away with more than they're getting away with today. And it's so important that we call out and distinguish the bad cops, because it helps us protect the image of the dedicated police officers that deserve more money, that bust their ass, risk their lives every single day, and do one of the toughest jobs. You got to be tough, but you got to be civil, and you have to be human in doing your job. And you can't let emotions take over at the moment. So that's a tough job. As a talk show host, sometimes I lose my temper on the air in talking to people. But the consequences are, okay, well, I shouldn't have lost my temper. Well, sometimes I should, but sometimes maybe I shouldn't. But the consequences are just that simple. When you're a police officer, you can't lose your temper, not to the point of killing somebody. So I applaud the verdict. Unanimous, guilty, 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 all 3 counts. Sentencing is about 8 weeks away. That's going to be another point of contention. I don't know if Chauvin is going to get enough time to satisfy everybody. But he's in prison now. He got caught. He killed a man. He's in prison, and he needs to be in prison for a while. How long will that be? We don't know. But that will be another moment to watch. But if it hadn't been for the cell phone, he might have gotten away with it. And the other great thing about this case is police turning on other police officers because they did wrong. They're not turning their back on their comrades. They're turning their back on people who are doing wrong. And Chauvin did wrong. And police officers who worked with him, and even his police chief, called him out. And maybe this is the beginning of helping to restore the relationship between police and society, because that is just such a key element in a civilized society. And also tomorrow, I'm going to talk about this, and I'm even going to write a blog about this. I think we've gotten to the point where the phrase, "I can't breathe," is really a mantra for America. You can't breathe, you die. Right now, all we've gone through, America can't breathe. We're having a hard time breathing. We can still breathe, but it's hard. We're losing our ability to breathe. So I can't breathe, that phrase takes on new meaning. I appreciate you joining me here on Scoot on the Air YouTube channel. And you can also join me on Facebook and Instagram, which is also Scoot on the Air. And join me on my radio show tomorrow on WWL. And I'll be back on YouTube again with more to talk about tomorrow night.